Welcome, everyone. Welcome back to the show. It's your host, Danny Haifong. I am joined by a good friend of the show, independent journalist and geopolitical analyst, Pepe Escobar. Pepe, good to see you again.
Good to see you, Danny, and good to see all of you out there. Well, I am sorry a little bit because I am now in paradise. So my initial instinct would be to drop everything we're doing and jump into the Andaman Sea, but we have work to do, right?
Right. Yeah. Well, of course, I am greatly appreciative of you taking the time out today. Everybody hit the like button so more people can hear this conversation as we begin here. So, Pepe, I know you've been deeply covering the latest developments surrounding the war in Iran. Overnight, there are reports of air defenses lighting up in the skies over Tehran. We have the Trump administration being briefed, or Donald Trump himself being briefed on multiple options to strike Iran. And we have, of course, the ongoing talk, absolutely just, I don't even know what to call it, kabuki theater. Trump just rejected the latest proposal by Iran. The only consistency that I see here, Pepe, is Iran's defiance of all of the Trump administration and the U.S.'s ongoing escalations, the blockade, and all kinds of other provocations. But Pepe, maybe you can help us understand, given your latest analyses, you've written two latest publications. The Strait of Hormuz is, of course, at the center of all this. The U.S. CENTCOM, they're all talking about trying to reopen this thing, quote unquote. And I'm curious on where we are in the war now and what you're looking at as we move forward here toward possibly a new round of strikes by the U.S. and Israel.
Well, apparently there's going to be an urgent pronouncement by Trump at 4 p.m. today, right? After the markets close. So anything could happen, including he may try to implement what the Joint Chiefs of Staff and the head of CENTCOM were billing as the final blow. Wow. As far as we know, they haven't even delivered the first blow, so they want to deliver the final blow. Well, look, this week has been quite something. A lot of immensely important things happening. Let's try to backtrack a little bit because essentially they involve Iran and Russia. First thing, Arakshi did a very well organized, meticulously organized mini diplomatic tour. Islamabad, Muscat, and St. Petersburg. First, he went to Islamabad to talk to the Pakistani mediators. Then he went to Oman, where he talked to his counterpart, but also he was received by the emir as well. And they talked essentially about the Strait of Hormuz. Then he went back to Islamabad, where he redelivered to the Pakistanis, let's say, a more concise version of what they had been proposing from the beginning. But now the order, the parameters are different because there are essentially 3 points, 3 stages, according to the Iranians. And this, by the way, is what Trump rejected today. Again, first one is end the war by all means. And this means all wars, including, especially, in fact, the war against the axis of the resistance as a whole. It's not only U.S. Epstein syndicate against Iran, but also against Hezbollah, against Yemen, against the militias in Iraq, against the axis of resistance. Number 2, an in-depth discussion about a new juridical setup for the Strait of Hormuz. And only then, in the third stage, number 3, a discussion about the Iranian nuclear dossier. It's obvious that Trump would reject the whole thing. First of all, if he goes straight to number 1, that's the graphic proof of the American strategic defeat. And number two, Strait of Hormuz, the Americans have 0 cards to play unless keep this ersatz blockade indefinitely. And the only thing that registered in Trump's mind is he wants a new nuclear deal, which whatever happens in the short term, middle term, etc., is going to be a sort of diluted JCPOA. It's going to be what we had since 2015, discussed in Vienna, then ratified by the UN Security Council, which was tore up by Trump himself. And we're going to have a JCPOA 2.0, which is not going to be much different. Then, very, very important, Arakshi went to, not to Moscow, sorry, to St. Petersburg, where he talked not only to Lavrov, but he was received personally by the president of Russian Federation for 1 hour and a half. That in itself is Milky Way spectacular. Putin never gives heads of state more than half an hour, 40 minutes, 45 minutes, 1 hour and a half to a foreign minister, which tells us Ushakov's leaks aside, because he only leaked what was the most obvious part, that was a very, very serious discussion. So serious that Putin called Trump after that. And that also lasted over 1 hour and a half, apparently, over 1 hour and a half. So Putin was basically telling Trump what he discussed with Arakshi in St. Pete. And what we got from the official Kremlin transcript from St. Pete was already quite something. Everything in terms of Russia basically saying we are all in, Putin demonstrating an enormous amount of respect towards Ayatollah Mojtaba Khamenei. He opened his speech to Arakshi saying, look, last week I received a letter from your new supreme leader, and I wish him all the best, all the typical protocolar stuff, but way beyond that. What does that mean? That they are talking at the ultra highest level. And of course, this is deeply appreciated by the Iranians, and this proves that Putin is totally in the game. Russia has skin in the game, and now this is made public directly by Putin's words, and not only his words, but his actions immediately after that, which is to call Trump for a long, long discussion, where among other things, he said that this has to be resolved diplomatically, that Trump going back to war is going to be unacceptable, not only for Iran, but obviously because it will involve the other Persian Gulf players, the petromonarchies. Did Trump register? Did he understood the memo? Apparently not. Once again, after this phone call, he was briefed by the Joint Chiefs and by the head of CENTCOM with the final blow possibilities, which are all of them absolutely horrendous, including attacks on Iranian civilian infrastructure. And of course, they could try another decapitation strike. And of course, the wet dream of sending Delta forces or whatever to capture the uranium that they don't even know if it's in Isfahan anymore. And it's not. Most of the uranium is out of Isfahan and is now in smaller packages. And it's a little bit everywhere and nobody knows where it is exactly. And of course, today Trump said, I reject the new Iranian offer. And he's trying to pose like he is in charge and he has cards to play. He has 0 cards to play apart from this ersatz blockade, which may have one of 2 Hollywoodish Netflix productions of, the Marines jumping on board a tanker here and there, but that's it. Most tankers are going back and forth, dribbling football style, the American blockade. The Americans cannot blockade. It's ridiculous. From the southern Indian Ocean to the Arabian Sea, it's like 1,000 kilometers. This is completely absurd because obviously these cowards cannot be in the Sea of Oman, much less in the Persian Gulf. So yeah, so you have tankers dribbling it, and the Iranians are masters of dribbling sanctions, blockades, harassment, maximum pressure, and all that. They have PhDs on that, So that's it. And Pakistan, early this week, they opened 6 overland corridors. So people tend to forget. And just look at the map. What is the shortest way between Iran and China? What is it? What's in the middle? Pakistan, with excellent relations to both. So obviously, everything that Iran needs, you do the back and forth via Pakistan. And even oil, if it's transported via highways, lesser quantities, but can also be done. Same thing in the China-Iran railway. They can transport some oil via the China-Iran railway across Turkmenistan, then Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, going to Xinjiang. And exactly, and this is less than the maritime corridor. So obviously, these people in Washington, they are not very familiar with maps of Eurasia. They simply don't understand all those stands over there. It's too complicated for them. But the people who actually live in Eurasia and have been trading among themselves for at least 2,500 years, they know it very well. And they know all the corridors. Ancient corridors, new corridors, overland corridors. So it's not thalassocracy that is reigning anymore, especially with this, once again, ersatz. Apparently there is a blockade, but nobody knows how this blockade is actually being enforced and where. Nobody even knows where these bloody destroyers are. Far away in the southern Indian Ocean. So maybe some of them are near Sri Lanka. They in fact, they boarded a tanker not far from Sri Lanka, by the way, and another one not far from Southeast Asia, from the Strait of Malacca. So that's it. These are Trump's cards. But it's dangerous. It's always very, very dangerous, Danny, because considering the volatility of the man in question, considering how much pressure he's under, considering that deep down in his psyche, he knows that he fucked up and there's no way back.
Yeah,
we are still hostages of his volatility. And that's what makes it so dangerous. Please, go ahead.
No, I mean, I think those are all great points. And to this point about the blockade, I don't know if you saw this from Mr. Ghalibaf, the
this was
speaker of the Islamic the parliament in Iran, but also he's like the head negotiator. But just this response about Iran's massive borders. I mean, when you total the length of the entirety of the United States, east to west, you're still 1,000 kilometers short of Iran's total borders. And of course, this is great for Pete Hegseth.
This is great. He has to explain to Hegseth kilometers and
what's a kilometer, right? But again, that just speaks to, and then it just speaks to Iran's mentality here, though. It seems like Iran is exercising a vast amount of strategic patience and is not letting up at all on its core demands. Despite the fact that, as you said, I'm not going to play the video because it's on the outside of the Air Force One and incredibly noisy. But Trump just said, as you said, the volatility here, that the briefing with CENTCOM was to go over options to blast the hell out of Iran and finish them forever. And that's the narrative right now, despite massive increases in the oil prices and a lot of anxiety about what targeting of oil infrastructure in Iran would mean for the entire region. But, maybe you can talk about these bigger moves. I know you wrote a couple of pieces recently. One, the UAE has left OPEC and, there's, of course, this kind of like choke point politics happening where the U.S. is so obviously desperate about Iran's control of the Strait of Hormuz. But the way they're behaving is it seems like they're trying to choke off as much of global trade as possible that goes through not just the Strait of Hormuz, but the entirety of these waterways that are so critical that I know you follow. So maybe you can talk about this as part of this war. Scott Besson is saying this blockade will last until February 27th conditions exist, which seem to be quite a fantasy. That's never going to happen again. But your thoughts?
This idiot has never been to Iran. He has never been to Eurasia. He doesn't know shit about how Eurasia works, or the Iran as the crossroads of Eurasia. These people have no idea about that. Well, the great, let's say the Great American Blockade Project. This is how I defined it. It was very, very simple. Venezuela. Well, basically what they were doing in Venezuela, they were shooting boats filled of fishermen. That was the American blockade. But it worked because of everything that was already rotten in Caracas. So the next step was the big test, Strait of Hormuz. For this great blockade project, it's essential for the West to control Hormuz, because essentially it would control Iranian exports via Hormuz. Not so much the other Persian Gulf monarchies, but Iran's exports bypassing the petrodollar. And later, obviously, as we can see by ourselves right now, this is going terribly wrong from an American imperial thalassocratic point of view. The next step will be Malacca. And that's where it gets even more complicated, because the blockade project is Iran, but most of all China. In the minds of the conceptualizers of this blockade, and we can certainly stress that the Elbridge Colby is the brains behind the concept. It's to blockade supply lines, energy supply lines to China. Obviously, these people don't look at what's going on overland. Zillions of examples. Power of Siberia 1 and soon Power of Siberia 2. The gas pipeline from Turkmenistan to Xinjiang. Kazakhstan oil pipelines from Kazakhstan to Xinjiang. Myanmar gas pipeline from Myanmar to Yunnan province in southern China and all that. So there are zillions of possibilities. And for the Chinese, so far, before the blockade, there was no problem for tankers leaving from Iran and going to China. The blockade, the Americans don't have the cojones to blockade a Chinese tanker in the Arabian Sea, in the southern Indian. Well, first of all, they will never go to the southern Indian Ocean. Let's say in the Arabian Sea, for that, they will never do that. They don't have the guts to do that. What they were trying is to blockade Iranian ships. Iranian ships, they, among other dribbling strategies, they can navigate very close to the Iranian, in Iranian territorial waters within the 12 nautical mile limit. Then same thing in the Pakistani territorial waters, all the way to Mumbai. So this is one of the things they are doing. The number of Iranian tankers that were not seized, but rerouted, let's put it this way, nobody knows for sure. We cannot trust anything that CENTCOM says, by the way. So this blockade works as a Netflix fantasy. Yes, definitely. But in real life is a completely different story. And obviously, Iran overland, they don't care. And of course, they can even use the Caspian later on, if that's the case. With a little bit of infrastructure adjustment, they could use their Caspian ports. going, for instance, to Turkmenbashi in Turkmenistan, and then connecting with Central Asia, the rest of Central Asia. So the let's say the big picture of controlling these checkpoints is there, but the Americans don't have the means to implement it, because all of that presupposed their control in the Strait of Hormuz. That's why now this is an obsession for the whole industrial military complex, and also for Trump. Even though for Trump, the number one obsession is the nuclear deal, which he tore up originally. So that's why he keeps rejecting everything, because if we look again at this three-stage Iranian proposal, which probably the last redaction is quite similar to, because they are basically refining what started with the 10 points to these 3 top points, which are already included in the original 10 points. They know that sanctions relief, this is they can only discuss that if there is an end to the war. So, the logical Persian thinking about the whole thing is extremely logical. But obviously, for Trump is illogical by definition. Obviously, he has to refuse it, right? But the thing is, can the Americans sustain this non-blockade blockade for another, let's say, a month? This will collapse the global economy even more than it's already collapsing the global economy. So we're going to have a global revolt against this thing sooner rather than later, right? And of course, the rest of the world will personally blame Trump for this global economy crisis and for basically detonating famine in absolutely crazy proportions, a little bit everywhere. And there's already a list of very fragile countries. That includes Yemen, Egypt, Bangladesh, Somalia, Sudan, and many others. And of course, the Iranians, they have been telegraphing, faxing, sending emails for the whole planet over and over again. Look, we're not going to flinch. That's it. We go till the end. And if they want to restart the war against us, no problem. Our response now is going to be much, much worse than it was before.
Right.
So we go back to Zugzwang all the time, right, Danny? Anything he does, he's still trapped. And even if, which we know it's not going to happen, even if he declares a mission accomplished, we won, I'm leaving, this means de facto accepting a monster strategic defeat with global consequences we cannot even imagine, right? So he cannot leave. He needs an off-ramp that he can sell as a victory. All the off-ramps spell out defeat, all of them, with no exception. Even if he bombs Iran to the, what was it? Stone Ages, as he said.
Stone Ages,
World.
yes.
Stone Ages. World. Even if he bombs Iran to the Stone Ages, it's not going to change anything. And of course, and this, they have to keep saying it over and over again. Everybody, our friend Professor Marandi, members of parliament, people linked to the IRGC, some of the best independent Iranian analysts, everybody saying the same thing. Look, if we're attacked again, just wait. We already have our target list, and it's going to be a hardcore. And it will include U.S. vessels. So it takes one missile sinking an American aircraft carrier. Very, very simple scenario. Wow.
Oh, geez. As the storm comes for you?
This is the weather here in the Andaman Sea, commenting our podcast.
Yeah. Wow, that's incredible, actually. Yeah, you are describing a storm, indeed, and here it is.
Exactly. So this is the storm, guys. So how can you possibly sell what already started as a strategic defeat because of a single fateful decision by a completely unprepared president, controlled by the usual suspects. We all know who they are. How can you backtrack from that? And how can you possibly spin that into a victory? It's absolutely impossible. So no wonder anything that he says. Of course, the only thing that he's very, very good at is to control the news cycle. He opens his mouth, he says something absolutely stupid, monopolizes the news cycle all over the planet. But is this going somewhere? Of course not. And then you compare with the extremely measured. Now it's great because the Iranians discovered the power of soft power, in fact. And of course, when we have some of their tweets are absolutely, hilarious. Not to mention the Lego angle. They conquered the whole planet with their Lego videos. So they are winning the soft power war as well, which until a few days ago, we thought was an American monopoly forever. Not anymore. So what's left for, even after he listens to Putin for 1 hour and a half? This means that Putin probably outlined in minute detail the consequences of doing something stupid, like restarting the war. Still, it doesn't register. So that's where we are. We are in the middle of a very dangerous strategic impasse, Danny and all of you. And there is no way out unless the president of the United States would start thinking in realistic terms. And we know, all of us, we know that it's absolutely impossible.
Yeah. So, great points, Pepe. And, for the Trump administration, it seems and no matter which of these options is chosen in terms of a quote unquote off ramp for it, you said it is no matter what, it'll be a defeat for the United States. And if we just look at all of those options, they all have to take into consideration Iran. The United States would rather behave in a vacuum and do whatever the hell it wants, even if it means walking away from a war. But no matter what, the United States has to address Iran. It has to address these core demands, because it seems to me that Iran is not just going, if the United States declares it's over tomorrow, but there's still a blockade, Iran is still going to respond. Iran isn't going to give up anything, and Iran is still going to put pressure to ensure that it gets what it wants. And I think that's kind of a historically unfamiliar place for the U.S. to be in so direct, in such a direct manner, in a war that it started. Now it has to face this reality of it is the one that's replying. Even if Trump says, "Oh, we'll finish them off. We have these finishing blows. I'm not satisfied with the proposals, the demand." It's still Iran that's the one saying, "This is what we want. What's your response to this?" Rather than the other way around. Iran isn't really listening to the maximalist demands that the U.S. is putting out there.
That's why this is, I'm coming back with my initial point, not 60 days ago, maybe 40 days ago already. It's the war that defines the 21st century geopolitically. Whatever happens. And we are already seeing the emergence of not yet a fourth power, as Professor Pepe has been saying. No, and we're not there yet. But a very, very strong middle power that is capable of staring down one of the three top powers in the world. This is already, wow, the consequences we'll feel the consequences for not only for the rest of this century, but beyond. Iran is now at the center of geopolitics, and the whole planet, especially the whole global south, is paying attention, learning their lessons. People are amazed at how a country under 47 years of sanctions, which has been deliberately impoverished by the Americans all this time, but managed to organize themselves against all odds, to exercise their independence, their sovereignty, and especially militarily to absorb everything that was thrown against them. It is immensely impressive. And everything made in Iran, which makes it even more impressive. Everything is indigenous. So yesterday I was looking at photos of Saigon in 1975. And yes, you look at those Vietnamese in Saigon in 1975 and say, yeah, now you have your brothers, the Iranians, in 2026. It's the same spirit, resistance, sovereignty. And against all odds, you go to the end. The empire is not capable of doing that. And now even worse. And now they lost the war in record time. Literally. They lost this war in the, let's say, in the first 10 days, it was already, we could see that it was already lost. And that they will never reach those lofty objectives, targets, whatever. So this is an unmanageable, by definition. And there is a parallel, a mirror image of the Ukraine story. The difference now is that Trump inherited the Ukrainian debacle. So in the Ukraine story, Trump has to manage the strategic defeat, even though he did not cause it. Now it's even worse. He has to manage a strategic defeat that he provoked. He doesn't have the intellectual capability to deal with that. Absolutely impossible. When you look at his previous history, when you look at how he deals with adversity, when we look at his mafioso Tony Soprano mindset, it's absolutely impossible. And on top of it, he's not the main player. He's just an actor. The people who are behind, the people who are really responsible for the war, that's it. They also never had a plan B. So they can blame Trump. Trump can blame somebody in his team, a very mediocre team, but the people who run the show are going to blame him. And he knows it. And that adds to his desperation, because there won't be anybody to save him in the end. So there is an element of Shakespearean tragedy in all that, even though obviously apply Shakespeare to Trump is a stretch of the imagination. But we can have a glimpse of how desperate he is at the moment.
Yeah, and it seems to all boil down to Pepe. You know, I don't know if you saw it, but CNN actually, better late than never, published this investigation of what happened to the U.S. military sites.
Yes,
talking about
finally
it's all coming out. It's all coming out. 16 of them were damaged, including high-value targets. And in this investigation, we're going to play it because it is quite long, but they find out that almost all of these sites have either been damaged vitally or unusable. So that is, I think, at the bottom of all of this is this acknowledgement that no matter what the United States does, Iran can continue to do this, which will push the global economic overheating that's occurring to an even higher boiling point. And you know, Pepe, you wrote an article recently about the UAE leaving the GCC, not the GCC, the OPEC. And I'm curious on
we're going to leave the GCC as well.
yeah. I mean, maybe you call it the creating an Arab Israel, and you know, at this point, it seems like the consequences of the war, the U.S. and Israeli war in Iran, are so far-reaching that it's even impacting the future of these Gulf vassal states. So maybe you can comment on this, because it seems like the SHIT is rolling downhill, even if this move is being portrayed, I think, by the United States as a almost like a checkmate that is going to help oil prices, but it's deeper than that. Maybe you can talk about this.
Much deeper. Well, the whole thing in the GCC is collapsing, Danny. But the GCC is already, I would say, irreparably split. Qatar and Oman are playing realpolitik, especially Oman. And Oman, they have a very nice diplomatic corps. They are very discreet. Not flashy like the Emirates, for instance. And of course, they're talking to Iran from the beginning. Qatar, for the moment, they are also in the background, but they know that they need a working relationship with Iran. Saudi Arabia it's complicated, but at least they are in the camp that is trying to find some sort of agreement. It's important because they were a member of those 4 Sunnis that first met in Islamabad in the beginning of all this, let's say, the Islamabad Kabuki, the extended Islamabad Kabuki. The first meeting was Egypt, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, and Pakistan. So from the beginning, they were trying to find some sort of course, they deferred to Pakistan as the top mediators, but they were on the table. It's important. Guess who was not on the table? The Emirates. And when we say Emirates, we need to make a distinction. This is not the 7 Emirates. This is basically Abu Dhabi, Dubai. The other ones, they don't, we have nothing to do with whatever you're doing in Abu Dhabi and Dubai. So no wonder we already have circulating the possibility of the Republic of Sharjah springing up one of these days. Fascinating story. MBZ, okay, let's go straight to the point. He's a bloody gangster, extremely dangerous, opportunistic. People who know him close say, wow, if you think that MBS is a rotten apple. And by the way, in the beginning, MBZ was the mentor of MBS. So extremely dangerous character. He made his bet even before the war. He made his bet with the Abraham Accords. And even before the war, he made his bet that he was going to align the Emirates with US and Israel. And of course, part of IMEC, which as it stands now is dead for all practical purposes. And once again, we have to remind all of you, I'm sure most of you know about it. IMEC is not India, Middle East corridor. It's a misnomer. It's Israel, centered on the port of Haifa, Saudi Arabia, the Emirates, Europe, India corridor. Because the central idea of IMEC is to make Israel the key trading hub connected to 2 Arab nations and then connect to Europe and Indian markets. As it stands, this thing is dead. It's very, very hard to recover later on. And then we enter into the big clash between Riyadh and Abu Dhabi, the competition between the UAE and Saudi Arabia. Now, in terms of how to deal with Iran, this is graphic in front of everybody to see. Saudi Arabia is trying some sort of arrangement, some sort of composition, even diplomatic, and the UAE, for all practical purposes, they are at war against Iran. And Tehran knows it. And there will be blood. There will be a response. The Iranians know exactly what the UAE did in terms of facilitating or even unleashing attacks on Iran from UAE soil. So there will be a response. So what MBZ's master plan? Okay, I need to sell as much oil as I can. If he's inside OPEC, he needs to respect the quotas. So far, the quota for the UAE was a little over 3 million 3.4 million max. They built capacity to export 5 million barrels a day. How can they do that inside OPEC? They can't. So, bye-bye OPEC, bye-bye OPEC Plus. So they can sell as much oil as they want and as their Asian customers especially want. Three top customers of UAE are China, Japan, and India. So they can sell as much as China, Japan, and India want. Trump loves it because this will, oil prices will theoretically go down. But the problem is, Iran will look at that and said, look, no, you're not get away so easy like that. We still owe you a response for what you did to us during the war. This means Fujairah, the oil terminal of the UAE, is not going to be safe anytime soon. And it just takes a little flash for the Iranians to bomb Fujairah, for instance. And then MBZ's plans collapse completely. Of course, on top of that, the conceptual approach of MBZ, he aligned himself with the US and Israel because he wants to turn the UAE into a sort of Arab Israel. And that's when it's going to be analyzed in detail by the other GCC members and the BRICS members, because once again, everybody, don't forget, the UAE is a full member of BRICS. So MBZ, I'm not sure who's been advising him, but wow, this is going nowhere. It's an extremely risky bet with no guarantee that it's going to work at any level. In terms of energy markets, geopolitically, of course, geoeconomically, militarily, you name it. Not to mention that the GCC and the BRICS, when they look at that, wow. So that's why we can even consider the possibility that sooner or later they're going to leave the Arab League and the GCC as well. After all, it's Arab Israel. What the hell they're going to do inside the GCC or inside the Arab League? Very, very dangerous. So the Iranians are looking at that for the moment. They're not doing anything. It's fascinating. The Iranian silence on the UAE for the moment is fascinating because depending on what happens next, there will be something. And of course, one of the reasons that, an extra reason that MBZ made his risky bet is that from the beginning he was saying, we are not going to pay the toll booths in the Strait of Hormuz. And closing it all up, Danny, the big thing, he made his bet that he's going to stay with the petrodollar. And that's why Trump loves the move.
Yeah.
So he's betting on the petrodollar. And at the moment, to bet on the petrodollar is not exactly a long-term view.
No. I mean, it seems like the UAE is following a potential pattern for the rest of the, I guess, the Gulf vassal states, which is to, despite the obvious unfavorable position of the United States in this war, to kind of form a circle around the United States and become even more ingratiated than even they were before. And that is a very risky gamble, since it seems to be their behinds that are going to be the ones that are, that pay the biggest price and we know it's not even an if, it's when the United States and Israel want to engage in more hostilities, more acts of aggression against Iran. Right? I mean, that's what it seems like. It's a very curious decision,
right, Danny?
Yeah.
Anything is possible. Exactly. We're not startled by anything anymore. Could even be this weekend.
Yeah, and that begs the question, Pepe. A lot of people are concerned about the position of China, the position of Asia in the multipolar world out of all of this. What's your view right now on that? It appears there is no panic coming from any. I was just in China. There certainly is no panic coming out of China.
You
Iran, there
did
certainly is any
see
panic.
panic in China, no? Exactly.
Yeah.
I'll be going next. Fine, I made up my mind. I want to go before Trump arrives in Beijing. From what I've been reading and talking to people before I go, same thing. They're not panicking. They're just observing. It's the Chinese way, of course. Nah? It's careful considerations here and there. Nothing, no language absurdities. You name it. Very composed. But of course, they are paying a lot of attention to individual moves of their Persian Gulf suppliers, and that means Saudi and UAE especially. And of course, with Iran, there's no problem because even before, when the IRGC Navy were collecting the toll booths in crypto or in yuan, no problem. The Chinese, they had free passage, and they will always have free passage. By the way, the Russians as well. The Iranians said, I think yesterday, that Russian ships, they don't need to pay any fees whatsoever. So country by country, they are already negotiating with Iran. That's the thing. The juridical status of the Strait of Hormuz is going to be something completely different, and nobody is complaining. They will adapt, and the toll booths in reals, no problem. Everybody will adapt. And of course, maybe a lot of them will, the second option will be yuan, obviously. And of course, the Iranians will accept it.
Yeah.
So none of that can be changed by the US. None of it. None of it. We are already in a different system, completely different. Not to mention now that Iran is, but in geopolitical global terms, wow. Now Iran is respected as a major power by everybody. The Europeans are already starting, individual European nations are ready to, okay, how are we going to deal with that?
Right.
Not Brussels. Brussels is,
lost.
That thing is, you cannot even qualify it, how stupid it is. But individual nations in Europe, we're going to have to do our own deals. So obviously, we're going to have individual European nations negotiating the passage of their tankers with the Iranian government, of course.
Yeah, and I don't know, you've probably noticed, Pepe, that the United States, Donald Trump is continuing, despite the perhaps the need to close ranks, build support for the war. He is very keen on kind of bludgeoning Europe and beating over so-called European allies, which have not been so useful in the war in Iran. So now there's, of course, Germany, Italy, these countries threatening to pull troops. It's like, ooh, okay. But I'm curious on Europe. It's like, all right, but of course, how the oligarchy, how the the elites, how they view it is, this is a big tragedy, right? There's a huge problem here. But what's your view on this? Because it seems like there is at least some consternation, anger by the United States and Trump administration over the fact that Europe doesn't really have, I mean, you talk the U.S. and no cards to play. Europe is running in the negative and certainly cannot afford to. It can't afford to lose anything else. I mean, it already.
You don't know what a card means in Europe. Cards, what's that?
If they lose any access to these waterways, if they're if they're blockaded because of blockades, I mean, it's a complete disaster for. It already is. I mean, we know that the European economies are being hit pretty hard by what's going on. So your thoughts on this position of Europe and Trump?
And you have those intergalactic idiots in Brussels still talking about sanctions on Iran. Can you believe this? Well, anything that Europe does or doesn't, it's their Zoom, but their Zugzwang is different. Their Zugzwang is the stupidity Zugzwang. But every move they make is by definition stupid. And of course, knives on their collective backs.
Right.
So what we're going to see from now on is more and more national, individual nations initiatives, which goes in parallel to the progressive collapse of not only the EU but also NATO. They are on going to the, plunging into the dark pit in parallel, inevitably. It depends on countries that have a strong dependence of imported energy. They are in dire straits. Some are slightly better, in the case of France, for instance, because they still have nuclear energy. And they have a gas deal with Algeria, which is not so bad. But Germany, wow, absolute disaster. And of course, even if the opposition says, look, we need to start talking with the Russians again, as it stands with the current discombobulated sausage as prime minister, nothing's going to happen. And Brussels forget it. Brussels forget it. Brussels, they would impose sanctions on both Iran and Russia till the end of time. By the way, the storm here, of the storm here is fantastic. They are deep into our conversation then.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, no, I mean, it is. I love it. I love the background noise. It's very apt, I think, for what's going on here. Yeah. Well, I guess finally in the last 5 or 10 minutes, 10 minutes or so we have here, Pepe, I wanted to ask you about this development, which I know you've been writing about. I know you've been talking about Indonesia in particular. There's a lot of, I think, ripple effects from this war, but one appears to be, of course, even despite the U.S. doing its best to bludgeon countries over the head, Asia, Europe, everywhere, to pull away from China, countries like Indonesia are playing a very delicate game. And there was the big news that they have fully linked their QR payment systems together, which is big because these two countries are very big trade partners and have actually achieved quite a lot in recent years. But I'm curious on what your thoughts are on this. This whole war has really put up the question of what is the future actually of the petrodollar, of the US dollar, and of the international financial system dominated by the United States. And it seems like we're seeing move after move away from it, despite the threats that exist from this war. So your thoughts on this development here?
Is like this post that this is excellent because it goes straight to the point for most people traveling across Asia, mostly businessmen, but also tourists. They can use Alipay virtually everywhere now, which was not the case until, I would say, 2 years ago. The real boom of Alipay all across Asia started last year. And Union Pay as well. So a lot of people across Asia now, they don't have a MasterCard or a Visa card. They have a Union Pay card. And this is something, well, I saw this from the beginning, and I never cease to be amazed how Union Pay, they basically conquered the Asian market. Okay, it took a while, 2012, 14 years. But in retrospect, 14 years is not much. In the beginning, they had nothing. For instance, when I was in Hong Kong, I dealt with HSBC. One day they gave me a Union Pay card. And I arrived in Europe and I couldn't use it. There was only one bank in France that accepted Union Pay. So I came back to Hong Kong. I went to talk to the guys. I said, guys, what is that? They said, well, why don't you tell us, your customers, that you give us a Union Pay card and not a Visa or a MasterCard? They said, yes, because they made a mega offer to us. They said, we'll give you anything you want, you HSBC, one of the biggest banks on the planet, if you start switching from Visa and MasterCard to our card. HSBC, obviously, because they probably got a mega bonus for that. They start doing that in 2012, 13, 14. Now, in Europe, everywhere you go, you can also use Union Pay. So Visa and MasterCard are being expelled from the market little by little. And across Asia, everybody is using QR codes from their banks. Once again, bypassing completely the American system. That's the future. And this is the future that the Chinese are also implementing with their payment system, CIPS, the Chinese International Payment System, the Russian, SPFS, the Iranians, they have their system as well. So soon, they're going to coordinate all these payment systems, especially the three big ones, China, Russia, and Iran. And that's it. You don't need to go through the American control system anymore. That's it. In the case of Russia and Iran, they have deep experience because they're ultra sanctioned. In the case of China, it's complicated because the Chinese are always afraid of secondary sanctions. But if you're using the Chinese international payment system, no problem. And of course, if you use Union Pay, it's a Chinese bank. It's a Chinese credit, facilitating credit mechanism, completely outside of the Western system. So no wonder it's a huge hit here, all across Asia, everywhere around here. Now here in Thailand, you can go to a stall in the street and you can use Union Pay or Alipay, literally everywhere. It's something that was not happening until 2 years ago. Now it's lightning speed. That's it. This is so the Iranians, when they look around, there are many options. And of course the Russians as well, because the Russians, when they were expelled from SWIFT, they had to start from scratch. So obviously they asked the Iranians, so okay, how have you been dealing under sanctions for so long? So they learned a few lessons from the Iranians as well.
Yeah.
And of course, Russia is a very complicated case. For instance, I go to Russia a lot. What I do in Russia, I cannot do outside of Russia, because it's, of course, you cannot use SWIFT or the American system. And even a mega bank in Russia like Sber, it's one of the biggest banks in the world, you cannot use your Mir card anywhere because of the American system. Yeah. So that's why they are all okay, which is something that they have to do inside BRICS. It's one of the first things the BRICS should do. Introduce the famous BRICS Pay, BRICS card, or whatever. For the moment, it's complicated because it takes a long time, testing, and very complicated, Danny. Most of these nations, they are still connected to the American system.
Right.
So try to explain to the Indians that from now on, we're going to use the BRICS system of payment. Very complicated. The UAE, for instance, the UAE is going to be impossible. They're going to have to be thrown out of BRICS eventually, because after all, they are linked with Israel and the US.
Yeah.
But it's moving very fast. This internationalization of alternative payment system, it's absolutely inevitable, and there's absolutely nothing the Americans can do about it.
No. Yeah, this is the future. And of course, Iran, there was reports that Iran, I know there were early reports about in the Strait of Hormuz, the toll system, settling that in Chinese yuan. But now it seems like there's reports
in reals.
That Iran wants to settle in their own currency, which is a very interesting development. It conforms to what you just said in terms of Iran, Russia, and China. spearheading this
and strengthen their currency, which was attacked directly by the Americans early this year, late last year and early this year. Good thing for them. And of course, the yuan is going to be the backup currency. There's no question about that. But they need to promote their own currency. Of course.
Yeah, definitely. Well, this has been a great conversation. Pepe, how about we do this? Everybody, be sure to hit the like button, but I have both of Pepe's articles that we spoke on today in the video description below, as well as his Telegram and X accounts. I want to thank everyone who watched. I want to thank the new members here. And Pepe, do you have anything else you want to announce or say before we head out of here?
Thank you. Well, I'll be here for another week, and then I'm going to China before Trump arrives in Beijing. So maybe we should have a conversation after Trump's trip to China. This is going to be quite something. Wow.
Yeah, it will be quite something. And I think what's quite something about it too is what is the status of this war on Iran, because that's going to be a huge influence on it. We already know what China is aiming at here. They've talked about Taiwan. They're already signaling that Taiwan is going to be a major point for them to emphasize. But if the war on Iran is either back on or unsettled, it's going to make this visit, I think, very, very interesting, very targeted, and potentially.
Well, the Chinese have no illusions. They are not expecting much from this. You talked to our great friend, Professor Zhang Weiwei.
Yeah.
Did he talk to you about the war in Iran?
Yeah, that was mainly the topic, and his view was, the civilizational perspective, of course, where he always comes at, but everything we've been saying here, he views it as a massive defeat for the United States, and that if it doesn't get its act together, it's only going to get worse and worse and worse, leading to, of course, the world, especially the important players like China, moving on ahead and saying goodbye to the United States in a lot of ways. That seemed to be his view, is like the world is looking at the U.S. with a kind of death wish that it has, and view it what to do about that from here. And everyone, of course, has different.
It's good because he knows the West well, man. He travels to the West a lot.
Definitely.
There are not many ultra high level Chinese scholars that know the West well. He's one of the few.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and everyone can catch that. The interview is up still. It was live, which was great. So be sure to check that out.
Okay.
But yeah, Pepe, okay, we'll head out of here then. Hit the like button.
Thank you
everybody,
so much.
That will spread the show around. Pepe's, where you can find him, and his articles are both in the video description. Of course, all the places to support this channel are there. Thanks to all the viewers, moderators, everybody who came out today, and I'll be back again soon, and I'll let you know when. Bye-bye.